The Dearborn Independent, Chronicler of the Neglected Truth, August 26, 1926, Volume 26, Number 45. Congressmen, state legislators, and others all join merrily in that great American game, Let's Pass a Law, by John Olin Howe. Herewith is Section 413 of Chapter 67 Kansas Law of 1903, which chapter covers the operations of motor vehicles. Nothing in this section shall be construed as in any way preventing, obstructing, impeding, embarrassing, or in any other manner or form infringing upon the prerogative of any political chauffeur to run an automatic bandwagon at any rate he sees it compatible with the safety of the occupants thereof, provided, however, that not less than 10 more nor more than 20 ropes be allowed at all times to trail behind this vehicle when in motion, in order to permit those who have been so fortunate as to escape with their political lives an opportunity to be dragged to death, and provided further that whenever a mangled and bleeding political corpse implores for mercy, the driver of the vehicle shall, in accordance with the provision of this bill, throw out the lifeline. These United States are indulged with a flood of ill-considered, inconsequential, and grotesque laws. The speaker was author-trained, not an author and attorney. He continued, they overlap and often nullify each other. Many times the law on a certain subject in one state is so radically different from that in another as to cause one to wonder if these two states belong to the same nation. We Americans are the greatest lawbreakers on earth because we have so many laws to break. I'm not talking about criminals who intentionally act outside the law. I'm talking about average men and women, decent citizens, you, I, everyone who mean to keep within the law, but don't worry so as the police and other authorities let us get away with it. We were seated in this highly interesting library in Train's New York home, where he wrote his children's children and other bestsellers, and whence came Mr. Todd. He talked at length of the multiplicity of laws which encumber statute books over this country. Full laws, many of them general laws, enacted to cover specific cases, outworn laws, or never meant for daily guidance, laws which could not be enforced without disrupting societies, laws which you never heard of, dreamed could exist. Yet the law of this land, nevertheless, under which all of us are supposed to live, and within which we are bound to act by our oath and citizenship. Americans have a perfect mania of lawmaking, he cried. Our federal Constitution was drafted 137 years ago, and since that time we have framed and passed more laws to govern the conduct of our citizens than all other passed since Adam. How many hundreds of thousands are there? Train didn't know. But their number is growing constantly, covering every subject on the earth, in the heavens above and the waters beneath. Out of the session of Congress and our state legislation and the 48 states, there annually go onto American statute books upward of 15,000 laws, and many of the states' legislation meet but once in 2 years. In a recent 5-year period, more than 62,000 separate laws were passed by these 49 bodies, an average of 1,200 or more each for the state lawmaking body and the rest for Congress. And it required 65,000 decisions of courts of last resort to interpret this. These decisions fill 630 large volumes. Nor does this say outlay of municipal legislation, ordinances, and regulations of every kind under the sun, whose number is literally legion. In addition, there are thousands of interpretations and rulings of state and local departments. Even the best intentioned of us who go along regarding ourselves as law-abiding citizens, Train said, can never keep from violating more or less of them. Probably most of us who live active lives disregard some laws, ordinances, regulations, or order about every day. The trouble is we make too many of them. From the beginning, Americans have found little or nothing in human experience to imitate or to trivial for legal supervision and control, whether it be the sin of expectoration or the length of bed sheets. What makes it such more complicated is the fact that once law get on statute books anywhere in this country, they're likely to stay there. You may know that the Sunday observance law in the state of Connecticut was only liberalized to meet vastly changed conditions, and that state some 10 or dozen years since, after perhaps 150 years of a Sunday law, which is its essentially wording, had come down from the days of King John. Americans' lawmakers are ever exceeding loath to repeal laws which have had their days. The tremendous pressure on them to pass the new laws keeps their mind well occupied in the contrary direction, and they have a natural disinclination in any event to take responsibility for a change which may turn out for the worse. There is a wealth of dead letters and moribund laws on our statute books. Do you know, he said, I believe if the average man actually sensed his position before the law today, his pulse would go up every time he saw a policeman. We're the most law-ridden folk in the world. Nowhere over the globe is it as easy to break the law. Why are we aware that in the city of New York it is punishable with fine and imprisonment, mind you, to drive an automobile around any street corner at the speed more than 4 miles an hour? Did you ever hear of Charles F. Southmady, a leading legal light for years? He was so impressed by the great number of new laws constantly coming on that he employed another highly competent lawyer simply to keep him out of jail. So fearful was Mr. Southmady that he might unwittingly land in one of these man traps, as he called them, that he paid the other man well to familiarize himself with the statutes of his own state, especially the new ones, so that he might observe them. Hipped on the subject? Certainly not. He was simply a good lawyer and knew that he was up against. His anxiety was perfectly natural. Law-ridden, did I say? Cried the author. Absolutely that. We root for liberty, and then we make laws covering every conceivable subject under heaven. This is no matter to take lightly. It's deadly serious, really. The more laws there are, the harder it is to enforce them, and that leads straight to loneliness. When the law saturation's point is approaching, our law becomes either joke or instrument for blackmail. Have you ever stopped a vehicle with its left side to the sidewalk, one-way street, or not? Have you ever done that? Anyway, don't, or I may have to get you a bondsman. This is for your own good. Don't fail to tie up securely the newspaper in your garbage can. It doesn't matter what you see the superintendent of your apartment house do. I am talking to you on the law. There is a dire penalty for these offenses. By the same token, don't beat the rug on the front stoop, and be very careful not to carry an unmuzzled dog, no matter how small. Don't use the hose on your sidewalk after 8 a.m. And above all things, don't fail to have your chauffeur wear his motor badge on the outside of his coat. But those are merely local ordinances, I interposed. They are the law just the same, reported Arthur Train. And don't go so strong on Merrily. There are fines or imprisonment or both for these and mainly other things that might seem or small account to them. What is more, by the side of some local legislation in American cities, these examples are most conservative. I believe the city of Los Angeles still prohibits streetcars conductors from shooting jackrabbits or other live game from the platforms of their cars. Los Angeles did have a law forbidding more than one person bathing in or occupying a bathtub at the same time. Possibly this has been rescinded, I don't know, as perhaps has another Los Angeles ordinance makes it a misdemeanor to wear false whiskers, whether complete or partial. It is necessary, though, he went on, to go as far as municipal ordinance for absurdities. How about this statute in a western state? When two trains approaching each other at a crossing, they shall both come to a full stop, and neither shall start until the other has gone. Why, as recently as 1919, the General Assembly of the State of Ohio put this into statute. Major surgery, which shall be defined to mean the performance of those surgical operations attended by mortality from the use of the knife or other surgical instruments. And you may not know that the state of Indiana requires the hotel proprietors to put fresh sheets on a bed after the departure of the guest who has occupied it. Nothing compels him to change the sheets while the guest remains such. At that, we need not go west at all to find some old laws. A radical commonwealth, certainly New York State is not, proud member of the original 13 colonies, but the New York State Penal Code has some peculiar things in it, relics of another day, even after the law has been codified. It is a crime to sell skimmed milk in New York State. It is also a crime to run a horse on a highway. It is a crime to exhibit any puppet show, wire or rope dance, or any other idle show acts or feats which common showmen, mountebanks, or jugglers usually practice or perform, or to exhibit any paintings, any animal, natural, or other curiosity without a permit signed by two justices of the peace. It is criminal to cut ice in front of the premises of another, to require more than 8 hours. Labor of an employee or pay wages other than weekly, to ride a bicycle on a footpath, to run a horse within a mile of where a court is sitting, to mismanage a steam boiler, to keep a slot machine, secretly to loiter about a building for the purpose of eavesdropping, and so on and so on. These are but a few selected at random. You may have noticed that we have kept away from what people generally think of as freak laws, so-called blue laws, and the like. Many states still have these on their books. Why, within a generation of New Jersey grand jury found a statute under which to indict a woman as a common scald. Yes, actually, and she was served from the duckling stool with no small difficulty. And as to Sunday laws, it is probably illegal in possibly a majority of our states to drive or even walk for pleasure on the Sabbath, while hunting, fishing, or the simple outdoor games are crimes. I believe in the law, concluded Arthur Train, and so do you. But the time comes when we shall have to do something to limit the lawmaking power, as most states have already limited the sanction of their legislations to a certain number of days.